Hey guys, Josh here. I dare you to give me under 30 minutes of your time and let me show you that After Effects is nothing to be afraid of. Before we talk about After Effects, check out this short video I made in both Premiere and After Effects.
I've always had questions about heaven. I guess I was raised to think maybe we're floating on a cloud one day, playing a golden harp. Imagine if I were to discover a whole new picture of what heaven really is about from what the Bible says, that maybe it's not all about clouds and harps and endless singing, but what if there were a new earth and a city and civilization and people that I knew and a body that I lived in, and there is a whole new world called heaven that could be so wonderful that the very thought of this being my end destination could literally change my life on Earth.
So After Effects is an extremely powerful piece of software, with a scope that would require literally hundreds of tutorials to fully cover. But I think I'll be able to get you on a pretty strong foot with just this one video. If you're like me, the thought of After Effects used to scare me. I'm here to tell you that After Effects is actually very, very easy. Once you've done After Effects for a while, you'll begin to realize that you're actually just doing the same things over and over again. The perceived complexity can stem from the amount of times you do those same tasks, but again, you're only doing a couple types of actual tasks. So what are these core tasks? Now in my work, I'm always pre-composing, masking, keyframing, and motion tracking. We're doing all these four things in order to do something called compositing. Compositing is defined as the combining of visual elements from separate sources into a single image. The purpose of this is often to create the illusion that all these elements are part of the same scene. Compositing is by far not the only thing you can do in After Effects, but it's a massive part of it, and a really good place to start. In this tutorial, you're going to learn how to composite this scene via pre-composing, masking, keyframing, and of course, motion tracking. Now before we start, know that you can download the discussed After Effects project via the link in the description. It might be helpful to view it as you're following along. You will notice that the included clouds file, ismokeclouds26.mov, will be offline. This is because I had to buy it from VideoHive.com. Purchase link is in the description, but don't worry about purchasing it just yet. You don't need it to get the gist of this tutorial. How's it going, guys? We are now in Premiere. This is a piece of software that you've probably spent hours in. But guess what? We're going to go to a new piece of software called After Effects in just a few seconds. I'm going to tell you what we're doing before we move on. We have a pencil that's about to touch a piece of paper. The only thing is this piece of paper has some drawings on it. And we're going to want to make this piece of paper look blank because we want this to look like it's the first time this pencil has actually touched this piece of paper. And we want to pretend that this pencil hasn't actually drawn anything yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to do all of that removal via After Effects. We're going to do some visual effects. We're going to use something called compositing that we talked about before. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to right click on the clip and we're going to go to replace with After Effects composition. We're going to name this project. How about we name this project H5? Don't worry about the name. It's not important. We're going to save that. You would save that After Effects composition or project wherever you would want to save it on your computer. So After Effects is fairly simple as far as the interface goes. We have our timeline right here. Interesting thing about the timeline is every track only holds one video clip, as opposed to Premiere where you have multiple video clips on a single track. Only one video clip per track in After Effects. Right here, you have your project window where you have any types of compositions or sequences or clips that are stored here. All right, and you have your main like source window, basically the window that allows you to see whatever the timeline or whatever the playhead is looking at on the timeline. And that's all we're going to go over for right now. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create something called a null object. We're going to right click in your right here. We're going to do new and we're going to do null object. I'm going to tell you what a null object is in a second. Don't worry about it quite yet. Next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to actually create track points. These track points are what we're going to use to stick the fake elements that we're going to create in After Effects to this piece of paper to make it look blank. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the Tracker tab. If this Tracker tab is not here, go to Window, make sure Tracker is checked. Then we're going to go to Track Motion. Okay, we've just gone from the main composition window to the layer window. As soon as you click to track motion, we're going to do something called motion tracking. So we're going to basically track the motion of the camera. So we're going to create track points so that this track point stays in one place regardless of the motion of the camera. So what we're doing is we're going to analyze forward. First, you want to click a point. You want to choose a track point that has a lot of contrast. So right here is a lot of contrast between the black edge of the drawing and the white paper. So we're going to now click track or analyze forward. We're going to do that again, reset, because it kind of jumped around. It didn't stick on that point that we wanted it to track. One thing I want to actually point out too is that we have the motion target as null 1. That's again referring to the null object, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Let's go and find a better track point, a clearer track point. Let's track right here and see how that works. Track forward. Again, that didn't work. Let's try again. You may have to try this a few different times. Don't worry, you'll get it. The thing that's hard with this one is there's a lot of parts of this footage that's actually out of focus at a really shallow depth of field, and that's okay. We're going to still try this out. So I tracked forward, and as you can see, all these track points on this footage worked perfectly from here all the way to the end. So now I'm going to go back to where I started. I'm going to track backward now. Perfect. So as you can see, this track point is staying exactly at that point of the drawing where the thumb is for the entire length of this piece of footage. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I want to first show you the motion source right here is the footage that we're tracking, C0046cc right here. Don't worry about this stuff. The motion target is the null object. Perfect. And we're going to go to now click apply and OK. What that just did is it applied all of those track points to the motion target that we chose, which was null 1. So you can see all these track points here. Don't even worry about that on the footage. Just know that we just applied all those track points to null 1 in the form of position keyframes. So this null object is this red thing right here. What is a null object? A null object is a completely just blank layer that serves no purpose other than just holding track points. That's all it is. It's that easy. So what you see is this null object, this represented by this red square, is now sticking to the track point because these track points have now been applied to this null object in the form of position keyframes. Perfect. So this is what we're going to do now. I want to remind you, first we're going to duplicate this. Control D on a Windows or Command D on a Mac. And I'm going to rename this blank overlay 1. I want to remind you what the purpose of this project is. We want to make this paper appear blank. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to click on this blank overlay 1, which is a complete duplicate of the original footage. And I'm going to create a mask by clicking on the pen tool. And I'm going to create a mask and click on a portion of this clip that is blank. Okay. And then I'm going to click on Effect. Sorry, I'm going to go to Layer, Time, Freeze Frame. That's going to freeze this frame so this clip is no longer a video. It's now just a frozen single frame. So now it's perfect. I have a cool frozen layer that I can now use to hide the drawing that's below it. So I'm going to scale up the size a little bit. For those of you guys that don't know what masking is, I have other videos covering that. It's the same in Premiere. Basically, what I'm doing when I say I'm masking something is that I am cutting basically this footage or now frozen layer so that the only thing that you see is what is within this mask. So masking is basically specifying the part of the footage that you want to see. So I only want to see the blank part of this footage because I now want to move it so it covers the drawing. So I still have an issue. This blank part of the footage is not sticking to the area that I'm trying to cover on the bottom layer footage. So what do? I want to do something called parenting. I'm going to parent this footage so it's parented to the null object, which if you remember, clicking on it is sticking to the drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this Pickwick thing on the blank overlay footage, and I'm going to drag it over to null 1 that parents this blank overlay 1 clip to null 1. As you can see in parent and link, it's now parented to null 1. So that basically means it's going to follow any of these position keyframes that are in null 1. And it's pretty cool. It basically made it easy because I don't have to even worry about keyframing anything in position here to allow this blank overlay to follow any part in the picture that I want to track. All I got to do is parent it to null 1, and it will follow the transform position keyframes in null 1. So it's perfect. Okay, you get the point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into blank overlay. I'm going to change the position so it's covering this. And then I think I may want to do a little bit of go into mask, and let's feather this a tiny bit. Looks better. Cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually duplicate this blank overlay 1. So let's do Command D again, or Control D. I'm on a PC. If you're on a Mac, Command D. It automatically makes it blank overlay 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this, and I'm going to position this one a little bit to the side to cover this part of the drawing. Cool. Perfect. Okay, that's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's okay. I don't like the fact that you can kind of see it popping up over the side. So let's go into this mask and start changing things a little bit. I'm going to go back to my selection tool. Don't need to be on my pen tool anymore because I'm not making any more masks. Okay, let's have it so it doesn't spill over the horizon like that. Let's expand that a little bit, see how that looks. Cool. Okay, now that's pretty good. I can see what this looked like before. Cool. Now, this isn't perfect. The reason why this isn't perfect is I'm actually going to do a little bit of a trick by actually putting a bunch of clouds over everything so it looks like he's actually writing this in the clouds, in heaven, we can say. So we're going to import a file. I'm going to import clouds. This file is called iSmokeClouds26. It's actually some stock footage that I got from VideoHive.com. Great source for stock footage. You can check out the link in the description. So now I'm going to drag this cloud footage over on top. And now I'm going to click on my mode. This is a blending mode, just like in Premiere. I'm going to change it to screen. That takes any blackout and makes it transparent. And then I'm going to bring the position down. I want it to be a little bit lower. But here's the thing. These clouds don't really look like they're sticking. It doesn't look like they're really a part of the, it doesn't look like they're a part of the actual scene because they're not sticking to the paper. It's just kind of floating on top. So what we got to do is we got to, again, parent these clouds to the same null object like last time. And as you can see, these clouds are now going to stick to the piece of paper because they're following the track points that they're following the keyframes in the position that the null object is, that the null object has, just like for the blank pieces of paper that we had. So that's pretty cool. Perfect, guys. So we have now gone over pre-composing. We actually have not gone over pre-composing. We've gone over masking, keyframing, and motion tracking. I want to specify the difference between keyframing and motion tracking. Motion tracking is basically automated keyframing. So what we have here is we automated these keyframes in transform for the null object by applying a motion tracker onto the null object. So these keyframes could have been manually placed, but I'm lazy and I don't want to do that. And so this motion tracker automated all those keyframes so that it perfectly follows the movement of the camera. I could go in right now and I could say create some text. Let's call this text, we're gonna just put my name, Josh. Josh's pen is what we're gonna call this text. This doesn't necessarily look great, but it kind of drives the point home. So I have this text that's kind of, right there. What if I go into the text and I go into transform and I, toggle position to create a keyframe, my first keyframe, and I'm going to create another keyframe by clicking on the add or remove keyframes tool. And for the second position, I'll bring it right here. I'm going to go back to that first keyframe and bring it out of the frame. So now, as I go from this keyframe, it's going to go out and it's going to go in like that. Perfect. So that's called keyframing manually. Motion tracking is keyframing automatically. So let's do this just because we can. How about we parent Josh's pen to null1? What's that going to do? It's going to basically make it so that Josh's pen is now following those same keyframes that the null1 is using as well. You can actually put keyframes on top of, basically you can put keyframes on top of a clip that's already parented to another clip. And what it's going to do is it's just going to add that motion to the motion of the null object that it's parented to. So this clip is always going to be parented to the null object. This text is always going to be parented to the null object, but we can add keyframes on top of that so that the text slides in where we want it to slide in. Cool. All right, guys. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about is something called pre-composing. That's the easiest thing. Pre-composing is literally the same thing as nesting in Premiere. So we're going to highlight everything, highlight all these layers, and we're going to go to pre-compose. And don't worry about what it's called. It basically creates a new sequence. We can click in, and there we go, all of our original layers. And we can click back to our original sequence in this tab, and we can see the nested, or as they say in After Effects, pre-composed sequence all on one layer. Say you want to go to effects. Let's go to effects and presets, and let's put on let's actually right click, do new adjustment layer. Adjustment layers are the same thing that they are in Premiere. And then let's go to effects and presets, and let's go into blur. Let's type blur in there. I'm trying to find a directional blur. Let's go into directional blur and let's put that on the adjustment layer. And then let's go in to the effects and click on the blur length and make it crazy. And then let's click on that adjustment layer, and then let's click on the pen tool and create a mask, so that we're actually basically saying that we only want to see the adjustment layer, which of course has the blur on it, within where the mask is. So let's go to that mask and let's blur it a little bit let's feather it a little bit. Cool. So what I've done is I've created an adjustment layer, and I have, it just simplifies nesting, or pre-composing as they say in After Effects, just simplifies your timeline. So I now just have the adjustment layer, and I just have the single pre-composed layer. I could go into, you have Lumetri, just as in After Effects, just like you do in Premiere. Click, put Lumetri color on this nested or pre-composed composition, and you can tweak curves, do whatever you want. And it's a lot easier to tweak cover on a nested clip as opposed to on all the other, individual clips. All right, guys, that is your first dive into After Effects. It was easier than you think. If you know pre-composing, masking, keyframing, and motion tracking, you can literally do anything else in the form of compositing in After Effects.
There is a whole new world called heaven that could be so wonderful that the very thought of this being
Alright guys, you may be wondering, now that you're done with this project in After Effects, how do you get this back into Premiere? Well, it's been done automatically. Go back to that original clip that you right-click to replace with After Effects Composition, and you'll notice that clip has been replaced with an After Effects Composition within Premiere. That includes everything that you just did in After Effects. You can then simply export that clip out as a normal clip in Premiere. If you ever want to go back to After Effects and continue editing, all you got to do is right-click on that clip/After Effects Composition and do Edit Original, and you'll be brought right back into After Effects, and you can continue editing it in After Effects. 4 plugs before I let you guys go. Now that you know how to use After Effects, you can now use my favorite transition pack, which you actually need to know how to use After Effects in order to use. You can check it out in the link below. I'd like to thank Aputure for giving me the light that I used in this video. More information on this LED light in the description below. I have a new playlist where you can watch free dope After Effects tutorials that I've made in the past. You can check it out in the description below. And lastly, you can check out my favorite sound effects pack on my website, luxuryleaks.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And as always, keep it chill.